Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for the month of May 2019. So, this is the Sun and Rising Sign horoscope for Leos. All right. There is a ton of action happening on the first 10 days of the month of May for everybody. It's pretty bonkers. You'll see that for Leos, a lot of this is centered on the ninth house, which is the house that we look to for higher guidance in life, whether it's universities, professors, sages, or saints, or the rule of law. The ninth house has to do with the governing truths of the universe, you might say. So the presence of Mercury in Aries at the very start of the month, May 1st, making a square to Saturn, South Node, and Pluto between May 1st and May 3rd, is accompanied by a trine that Mercury is also making to Jupiter and Sagittarius in the fifth house, and a sextile with mutual reception to Mars and Gemini in the 11th house. So if you think about it, that is like what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 planets in one point, and 4 houses. You know what I mean? So that's a lot. There's a lot happening in a lot of different places at once to start the month. This is just the first 3 days of the month. So how to interpret that? Well, the first thing that I would say is that for Leos, because this is centered on the ninth house, it really has a lot to do with principles. What kinds of principles are worth fighting for and are worth, even in terms of who you collaborate with, which friends, groups, colleagues that you consider to be your allies or not. A lot of it is coming down right now to this idea of the principles, ethics, beliefs, or commitments that you have philosophically. There's also the potential for a lot of learning and like disciplined, focused mental energy. But this can be quite productive and happy. It doesn't have to be a drag. There is a trine to Jupiter involved. There can be a lot of benefits, a lot of wisdom. But you also have to watch for a kind of pompous or arrogant energy being too severe, too principled, too rigid in your thinking in the first couple days of the month. So that's what I've got in a very general sense happening for your first few days of May. When you get to May 4th, it's interesting because right away, you've got a new moon in your 10th house, which is your career house. That's an indication that there is a developmental process that is going to unfold in the next moon cycle for you professionally right now. This makes sense. Uranus, planet that likes to shake everything up, in March, just in March, entered your career house, and it's already started shaking things up quite a bit. So this is following on that theme. And really, the new moon's planting a seed for an entire cycle of development to come, focused on the area of your career right now. What are you doing with your life? And new developments coming in that area. Probably with Venus, the ruler of the new moon, in the ninth house. This has a lot to do with relationships and beliefs, relationships and education, love and spirituality, women and work, women and beliefs, those kinds of things altogether. Now, when you go forward just a little bit more, you can see similar themes playing out in different ways. Between the 5th and the 6th, Mars and Gemini will oppose Jupiter and Sagittarius. That, although it has a real bravado and almost like a machismo around it, and it could be kind of really athletic, jocular, sort of knightly, crusading energy in your life, between the 5th and the 6th especially, you're also looking at philosophical issues that have a lot to do, again, with 11th house, allies, friends, groups. And, when it opposes Jupiter in the 5th house, you're talking about those, the good way of thinking about splits between the upper hemisphere and the lower hemisphere is what supports your life at the roots and what you're doing out in the world, and different kinds of philosophical conflicts that are happening between those two spheres of life right now. Very important. There's a possibility for real synthesis here, for finding your philosophical mission that marries both your inner life or your private domestic life and your external or professional life together, and the desire to go and get it, that could be quite strong at the beginning of the month. Now, when you go forward to like the 7th and the 8th, then you're seeing Mercury in your career house come into a very dynamic conjunction with Uranus. That can be very inventive, a lot of epiphanies and sort of aha moments, mental breakthroughs, but also kind of a little erratic and destabilizing. That should be really interesting in your career house. You know, you may feel the urge to speak or communicate something that's pretty provocative, or there may be some kind of unexpected change of philosophy or organizational strategy that's being implemented at work, new technology that's being used. That's pretty, you know, again, that's a dynamic transit as well. We're only on the 8th day of the month. Then between the 6th and the 10th, same exact time, well, look, then Venus is going to go through everything that Mercury went through, squares to Saturn, South Node, and Pluto, trine to Jupiter and Sagittarius in the 5th house, starting to get into a sextile with Mars in Gemini, right? So now we're talking about Venus, goddess of love, relationships, harmony, but also the ruler of your career house, going through these really intense squares with Saturn, South Node, and Pluto in the 6th house, which is traditionally a more combative house, a house that was traditionally related to strife. So we can only imagine that the 9th house sort of philosophical emphasis of the month is going through that whatever is happening for you philosophically is of greater importance and significance. It's weighty. And there may be some real tension and conflict around those things. You know, first 10 days of the month, here's Venus going through the same thing Mercury goes through. Now it's affecting relationships a lot more. Now it's affecting harmony in the workplace a lot more. But there's still executive decisions to be made. And with Venus hitting a trine to Jupiter, I still think that these conflicts that you're having, whatever they might be, as long as you're not too rigid or inflexible, I think that tough choices lead to very good results right now. So make the choice that you know you need to make, whatever, even if it feels a little scary. Then we go through from the 10th to the 15th, we're getting into the grand Earth trine. So at this point, then you're going to see the Sun moving through trines to Saturn, South Node, and Pluto in Capricorn. And on the 14th, we're actually going to see a grand Earth trine when the Moon in Virgo gets in on the mix. We had a grand fire trine last month. This is a grand Earth trine. 2nd, 10th, and 6th, very productive houses. We're talking work, business, money. It may be more labor intensive, it may be more contractive. There may be some kind of rebuilding or transformative process at work that is somewhat exhausting with Saturn, South Node, and Pluto retrograde in your 6th house. But the Saturn and Pluto are retrograde. Nodes are always retrograde. But those two retrogrades in the 6th are not easy. They're suggesting that something, so you might be building something, but something else may be falling apart or needing serious maintenance or fixing. Or there's just, 6th house is just a tireless taskmaster. It's just, sort of slaving away with stuff in the 6th house a bit. But the grand Earth trine, again, very productive at the very least. So then when you get into the full moon on the 18th, the full moon lands in your 4th house of home, family, parents, land, property, while its ruler, Mars, has just entered Cancer and gone into its fall in your 12th house. For everybody, this has the potential to be a more dramatic and emotionally painful or challenging full moon. But for Leos in particular, it's constellating itself around home and family, and maybe some self-destructive tendencies related to family psychology or ancestral karma. It could also have something to do with some loss or some emotional pain that you're working through at the roots. The good news is that on May 23rd, not long after the full moon on the 18th, Mars, that sort of painful Mars in Cancer in its fall in Cancer, in your 12th house, will be square to Chiron and Aries in the 9th house. So this emphasis on philosophy this month carries over after the full moon, providing you with some form of understanding and healing and greater wisdom. I think the full moon might be a little bit of an emotionally tender place or a more volatile place, but there's potential for real healing and understanding not long after the full moon when Mars squares Chiron. Then finally, on the 29th and 30th of the month, at the very end, really like this, you're going to see Mercury hitting opposition to Jupiter while squaring Neptune in the 8th. This is a great time for some kind of more comprehensive understanding about what forms of support or resources in your life are really healthy and those which are not so healthy. Again, so much this month is about clarifying your beliefs and about understanding your intentions and getting clear about your ethical guidelines. There may be some philosophical tension between yourself and others this month, but I think by the end, synthesis is possible, or a greater comprehension of your life situation such that you can make more intuitive, natural choices. I think the month feels like it begins more philosophically conflicted. I think it ends with unique synthesis and greater understanding. So that's where I'm heading for Leos this month, but I'd love to hear from you and hear how things go. Please leave me your messages. Tell me your stories. And I look forward to chatting with you again for June's astrology. Okay, take care. Bye.